Hey guys, welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing an updated how to make your makeup look like skin routine. I did one semi-recently, but this one is going to be all drugstore products. Before we get into the tutorial, I want to thank Sleep & Glow for sponsoring this portion of the video. If you've been watching my channel for a long time, then you know I've been using this for, I don't even know how long, 4+ years. The Sleep & Glow pillow. This is the Sleep & Glow Omnia pillow. You may have seen these on, you may have seen like ads for it. It has this like adorable little like, I don't know if you can tell very well with the, here you go. It has this little area right here where you can like, it nestles your face so that when you're sleeping, you're not being like smushed by your pillow. Because let's face it, when you wake up in the morning and your face is like all smushed in your pillow and you end up with a bunch of lines and stuff, no matter how well you do your makeup, you're probably not going to feel your best. I know that that's how I felt before I started sleeping on this. I sleep on it every single night. I use the silk pillowcase, which is really nice. In fact, they were nice enough to send me a second one, so my boyfriend sleeps on one too now. It makes a huge difference in the way that you wake up in the morning because your face is not all mushed against your pillow. You wake up not looking like super puffy or all like creased up, you know, all smushed. The brand actually conducted a study in Barcelona. They said that 82% of cases, sleep wrinkles were reduced after 3 months of sleeping on the pillow. We're obviously using drugstore makeup so that you don't have to spend like a ton of money. But one thing you should be investing in is the way that you're sleeping, okay? Taking care of your skin. And what's really nice is in honor of Women's Day, they're gonna be offering a 15% off coupon. So if you use my code Alexandra15, you'll get 15% off from March 1st to March 15th. I think I said this before in like an older video, but I always want to pack it with me when I go places because it's the worst when you travel and then you just have to end up like sleeping on a normal pillow and your face is all like smushed up. It's horrible. So if you guys are interested, I will link that down below, and don't forget to use the code to get 15% off if you want to, or pay full price. Okay, so let's get into it. Once you have, you know, taken care of your skin overnight, we all have to be conscious of what we're doing overnight. Skincare is super important. For my moisturizer, I used the Inky List water cream, which is not technically drugstore, but it is an affordable moisturizer, which is really nice. It's actually a pretty good dupe for Tatcha Dewy Skin, just saying. So my skin is like pretty well hydrated in the areas that I want like a little bit more grip and maybe like a tiny bit more hydration. I'm going to use the e.l.f. Jelly Pop Dew Primer, which is a very nice like hydrating primer that it just kind of adds like that extra grip to your skin that really allows your makeup to like hold on to and last throughout the day. However, if you are like really oily, you should avoid using this in the areas that are like particularly oily. So for me, my skin is well hydrated. I don't really need anything in the center of my face right now. So I'm just gonna use this on the outer perimeter where I have some areas where I have some breakouts that might just need a little bit extra hydration. So the way that you prep your skin is gonna be really important. You kind of like want, I'm gonna do 2 pumps. You kind of want to make sure that your skin looks the way that you want it to look with makeup on it, if that makes sense. So like if your skin is extra dry, then you want to make sure that you are like really hydrating it. But you don't wanna, you wanna make sure that you're not overdoing it with the hydration. Because if you overdo it with the hydration, that can also cause like a lot of like creasing, caking, or just breakage of your makeup. And then I'm actually gonna use just a teeny bit of this, teeny little bit underneath my eyes, where I have extra creasing, extra darkness. Now this is a primer that I would say sets quickly, meaning that you don't really need to wait too long for it to like, for your skin to absorb it. If you're using a heavier moisturizer, then you're gonna need to, like if you have really oily, if you have really dry skin and you're using a heavier moisturizer, if you don't allow that moisture to actually like absorb into the skin, then it's gonna be sitting on top of your skin and it's just going to mix with your, whatever you're putting on top of it and cause like breakage, caking, crepiness, creasing, all of that kind of stuff. This is not drugstore, but my lips are really dry, so I'm applying Auric. Okay, so color correcting is number 1. You want to make sure that you are focusing first on the area that is your like focus. If you have redness, then like a green color corrector. If you have like dark spots, then it's kind of like the same sort of process is what I'm gonna be doing here. So I love using I use this on regular makeup days as well. This is the LA Girl Pro Concealer in Light Ivory, which I still don't know why it's called Light Ivory. It is this incredibly, it's like a nice light warm peach. The reason that I'm using this is to warm up the area around, the dark area around my eye, because I am going to be placing concealer on top. And I want that concealer to not end up looking gray when I'm going in with a lighter color on top of this dark tone, because that's something that like a lot of people have a problem with. I am not just using a color corrector right now to like cancel out any color. I'm using this specifically to warm up this area, so when I go in with my concealer, they work together to create a warm layer underneath that light color so that I don't end up with a gray tone. So that's why I'm using this, if that's always confused you. So I'm just gonna use the tiniest little bit just where I need it, so like mostly just in this hollow of my under eye. Always place the product like where you need the most of it, because you're gonna be able to blend it out, you know, into other areas. I'm also gonna do my best to use drugstore brushes. So this is from a Wet n Wild. Let's just stab myself in the eye. Brush set. I'm going to pat this out. And I'm going to focus it just in that hollow, that darkest area. Which extends to like my inner corner right in here by my nose. So I'm gonna bring it up a little bit. And then just lightly blend out. So taking whatever's left over to the outer corner of my eye, which I didn't need to put any product there, because again, we're going in with nice light layers. And I am, because I have a lot of creasing underneath my eyes right here, I'm just avoiding this area in general, because no matter what I do, if I put a lot of product there, it's gonna end up creasing no matter what. Okay, so that's already done like a really nice job. Obviously you can see that it's like a little bit peachy compared to the rest of my skin tone. Now I'm gonna go in with one of my favorites. This is Revlon Color Stay foundation in the shade Buff. If you watched my recent our foundation swatching video, then you'll recognize this. This one is for combination oily skin. They also have a formula that's for specifically dry skin, which is really nice. So this is just a really good shade for light to fair olive skin. And this is like a pretty full coverage foundation, so I'm gonna do one pump. I don't need that much. The only non-drugstore products I'm using a beauty blender. And what I'm gonna do is just focus this in the areas. My cat is eating and she's being very loud. I don't know if you can hear that. In the center of my face, which is where I have the majority of redness. Now I don't have a ton of redness in my face anyway, but especially around my nose, I have redness, irritation between my brows. I've got some breakouts, but we are not going to worry about like concealing these breakouts. We're gonna leave that for the very end. I'm gonna pick up a teeny bit more on my cheeks and temples, and then use this to start going into the outer perimeter of the face. But again, just a little bit. And I've only put one pump out on my on my hand, because like I said, the coverage of this foundation goes pretty far. And just because you're using a full coverage product does not mean, in fact, it doesn't mean that you need to use more. In fact, it usually will mean that you can use a lot less. Blending this out to the edges. And I just want to make sure that it is blending into my natural skin tone. So just not covering up my neck, but blending it down into my neck. You can use a sponge, you can use a brush if you prefer brushes, but I really like the damp. I just like the extra moisture that damp sponges give. So we have really nice coverage. We've evened the skin tone quite a bit, but I've hardly used that pump. Like maybe half of that pump, maybe like a third of the pump I actually have placed down on my skin, and it still looks like skin. Okay, for concealer, I am going to be using the L'Oreal Infallible. This is in the shade, is it light ivory? Oh, just ivory, 330 ivory, which once again is a very full coverage product, but I'm not going to use a ton of it. So I'm just gonna take this out and put it on the back of my hand. Pretty similar in color, a little bit lighter, slightly more on the yellowy side. which I prefer. And I'm going to use that same brush, just pick up a small amount of that concealer. And I'm going to start laying this in the areas where I want to brighten a little bit. So just right there. For this, I'm going to be using my Sigma sponge, which if you've been following me, you know this sponge, but it is not drugstore. So I'm going to brighten up this area. Again, not using a lot of product, and I'm really taking my time pressing it into the skin. A little bit on the chin. So these are just going to be the areas that I want to brighten up a little bit. I get a little darkness on the outer corner of my lips, so I'm going to brighten there. We're doing detail work, but we're still going to save the spot concealing for last. If I have a breakout that happens to be in an area that I want to kind of like brighten up, then that's fine. I'll go over it. But this is going to be a very, very slow building process. So redness around the nose. Taking a little bit of that out here to brighten up this part. And then I'm going to take that along the side of my nose. This just kind of helps to narrow my nose a little bit. It's just like a little trick that I like doing. You don't have to do it. With a slightly lighter color. And then I'm going to take a little bit of that under my eyes. Again, keeping it low so that I'm not bringing it into those creases. Then I'm going to go in with my sponge and press all of that in. You can just like go and draw on your face, but if you're like me and you like precision, I want to make sure that you're not taking it all over the place. Or if you have a difficult time with keeping product in one place, this is a good option. So we have a really nice coverage, but we're not using a ton of product. But it really is like doing the most. I mean, my under eyes are so much brighter than they were. But so far, my skin doesn't feel like there's anything on it. Okay, now I'm gonna go in because we've obviously created a lot of coverage, but like the face is looking kind of flat, right? So I have nice coverage, I have nice brightening. Now I wanna go in and do some shaping. So I'm gonna start off with my contour. I'm gonna use the Wet n Wild, what is this called? Mega Glow Contour in Oaks on You. Cute. This is 804A, which is just like a really nice kind of like olivey golden bronze color. It might look really orange on people who are very cool toned. And I'm gonna pick this up with the e.l.f. highlighting brush, which has kind of like a nice point on the end so that I have some precision. Now I'm gonna use sweeping motions because I don't really need to maintain a ton of coverage in this area. I don't have, you know, a bunch of redness or acne around my forehead. But if you're someone who has to maintain coverage, you don't want to like remove all of the foundation or the concealer that you just put down. Again, keep in mind that we are going to spot conceal, so it's not the end of the world if you do. But if you're trying to maintain more coverage when you're putting this product down, rather than swiping, you want to gently pat in this kind of a motion. And that'll prevent you from moving the product that you're placing, moving around like your foundation or whatever. This was a little too much bronzer. So I'm gonna go back in with my sponge and blend. Place this on my cheeks, patting a little bit. I'm keeping it a little bit higher than where I would put my contour, and then bringing it, like blending it a little bit higher to bring warmth to this part of my face. And then once I have that down, again, going back in with my sponge and just blending around the edges to make sure that everything is kind of melting together. Okay, so just nice warmth. If you're looking for a drugstore cream bronzer that has like more of a golden tone, this is a really good one. Okay, so now that I've warmed up my face, the outer perimeter of my face, I'm going to use this contour by Essence Beauty. This is the Baby Got Bronze. I don't know why it's called that, because this is straight up gray. This is a really good contour, cool tone contour shade. So I'm gonna pick up the tiniest bit of that on the same brush. And then I'm going to place this in my contour. I'm gonna put down just a tiny bit on each side to really build up my shape. This isn't drugstore, this is my Sigma switch, my travel switch. I'm gonna wipe that off and just pat so that I'm diffusing that contour into the bronzer. Okay, so we have like a really nice, like a sharp cheekbone happening. Because I went in with my bronzer first, it allows me to use a little bit less of a color that can kind of look crazy if you use too much, you know? Very nice. I'm gonna do the same thing with my jawline. I'm going to dip in with this. If you have like a very sharp chin or jawline, then you do not want to do what I'm doing here, because it'll just look like way too much on you. Like you can just skip this step completely. But if you have like a very prominent jawline that you're trying to reduce a little bit, then you can take a little bit of your contour and just kind of like brush it along your chin and along your jawline. But I don't have that. So I like to kind of amp up my jawline. So I'm taking it underneath to create that shadow. Again, buffing. And then once I have it in this area sufficiently, I kind of like double chin it out. Build up in any areas that are like kind of popping. And blend down the neck towards the center, like towards this area, this kind of like triangle shape, so that I don't just have like a stripe right here. All right, I'm gonna use this little, I think this is a little Revlon dome brush. I'm just gonna do a little bit of shaping to my lips and my nose, which you can skip if you don't wanna do this kind of thing, but it's a necessity for me. Okay, for my cream blush, I'm going to be using the e.l.f. Putty blush in, what is this shade? Is there a shade name on here? What? Well, there's one sticker on the side, but it doesn't have a shade name. It just says e.l.f. Cosmetics. Rude. But it's the light, it's the like the really light, like kind of baby pink one. That's what I'm gonna use. And I'm gonna use the e.l.f. angled blush brush to apply this. So I'm just gonna dip in lightly and focus this up high on the cheekbone. I'm using a really tiny amount so that I can build up as necessary, because if I want my makeup to look like skin, I don't want it to be like too intense immediately. You know, like that's already really pretty. Now for my blush, you can see, because I've already put down like my bronzer, my contour, I have a bunch of products here already, even though you can see like little bits of, you know, freckles and stuff. I've used quite a bit of products. I'm not trying to like remove those around too much, so rather than using a swiping motion, I'm patting. I'm gonna build that up just a little bit because it's such a pretty color. And I know a lot of people have a problem with their blush disappearing first. So one of the ways that you can prevent that from happening is to apply your cream and then set with a powder. So apply a little bit of cream, go in with your powders, set with a powder blush. It might look a little intense at first, but it'll make sure that it lasts. You just want to make sure you're using like light amounts of each product so it's not so overwhelming. Now that I have my blush down, I had to like I hadn't used it in a minute, and I had to kind of like dig out the old top layer. Now that I have my blush down, I'm gonna go back in with my foundation sponge and I'm just going to blend around all these edges using a light hand to just make sure that everything is nice and diffused. There aren't any like harsh lines anywhere. Okay, now that we have all of our face products down, all of the colors that we want, we're going to spot conceal, okay? So my biggest tip for spot concealing is to mix a custom spot concealer color. So depending on the area, for instance, this little area is mostly like, I would say foundation color with a little bit of blush. I'm going to take whatever is left over on my hand, which is quite a bit. And I'm actually gonna use this little Revlon brush. I'm just gonna use my switch once again. Once again, not drugstore, but this is included in my favorite set with Sigma, which I'll link down below if anyone is interested. So I'm gonna put a little bit, since it's just like on my sponge, I'm gonna put a little bit of that blush on the back of my hand. And then I'm actually just gonna put like a teeny bit of bronzer next to it. And what I'm gonna do is pick up a little bit of my foundation and then mix it with these two colors to create a custom color to match this spot on my cheek perfectly. That looks pretty good. Maybe a little more blush. So the trick to making your makeup look like skin is not to apply a ton of product everywhere. If you have certain areas that need more coverage, then focus on those areas later on. I'm gonna build up this coverage. Like I'm really gonna make sure that I'm applying like a decent amount of product there, but only in that little area, okay? So the rest of when you look at the rest of my cheek, you're not seeing this like full coverage. You're seeing these really beautiful like hues of color with little things coming through, you know, like this freckle, these freckles, / sun damage. I don't want to talk about it. Tiny little imperfections, but now we can no longer see that big red breakout that is driving me so insane. I can't stop touching it right here. Because I'll be honest, I'm putting like quite a bit of product down here to make sure that I'm fully concealing it. Then I have like this little guy up here, which is mostly just bronzer and contour. Bronzer and foundation, so I'm just gonna mix a little bit of those together to spot conceal. Place like the largest amount of product, again in the area where you want the most coverage. And then wipe off your brush or use a little switch and just diffuse around the edges. This area is just concealer, so I'm just gonna amp up that a little bit in that area right there. Okay. Any like tiny little breakouts, I'm not gonna worry about because I personally think that leaving like the smallest amounts of imperfections makes the rest of your makeup look like even more natural because you're seeing little bits of skin coming through, you know? Okay, now I'm gonna set with powder. I'm gonna do those little areas first, the areas that I spot concealed. I'm going to set with my Maybelline Fit Me powder. This is in number 10, which is quite light, but it's basically a translucent powder. So I'm actually gonna use that same little brush, the Revlon brush. I'm gonna tap into that powder and then tap it off so that I'm not going in with too much. I'm just gonna press really gently over that area. So again, I'm building up coverage. I wanna make sure that when I go in with my other powder, or with this powder to set the whole face, like gently, those areas I'm not moving around. Same thing here. Really gentle. Don't want to build up too much of this powder because if I put like a ton of powder in one area and then like a light amount of powder, it can end up looking like kind of, have you ever noticed like when someone places like a large amount of powder, if they use like a large amount of powder in one area and then like a light amount of powder, the powder, like the pigment, because you've used more of it, it just shows up so much more. It ends up looking like really opaque and too matte. So I don't want that to happen. I'm gonna do my under eyes before moving on to the rest of the face. So I'm gonna use my e.l.f. Halo Glow, which is my absolute favorite under eye setting powder in the entire world. I'm gonna use this little Revlon brush, which I think it's a highlighter brush. So I'm picking up the powder, tapping it off into the cap, picking it up, tapping it off. I do that a few times to make sure that my brush is evenly coated, but that I'm not going in with like way too much powder. And then I want to make sure that I'm sufficiently blended, which haven't gotten any creasing. Truthfully, I've changed my technique and I haven't really been going in with my concealer first, but my brain kind of shut off at the beginning of this video. So usually what I'll do now is I'll go in with my foundation and then I'll do bronzer, contour, blush, and then finish off with my concealer so that my concealer isn't sitting and settling. But it's not really settling. And press this gently. Tiny little amounts, just to make sure that this area is nice and set. Nice and set, no longer shiny. And then I typically, because I like to brighten, I use a little bit of that powder sometimes in the areas where I brightened. So sometimes I'll do this, but I'm gonna make sure that I'm patting in the areas where I spot concealed. But again, we already went in with that other powder to make sure that we're maintaining the coverage in that area. Brightened here. The only area I'm not gonna do is this area because I tend to get oily, and this powder does contain a little bit of a pearl, which is beautiful, but it can make this area of my face look a little shiny. So I'm gonna go into my Maybelline powder now, and I'm going to use a slightly larger brush for this. I'm going to be using the e.l.f. blush brush. Again, I'm doing the exact same technique, by the way, picking it up and tapping it off into the cap. Because you don't want to go in with a ton of powder. If you end up mattifying your face like crazy, it's not going to look like skin. Gently patting. I'm going to gently pat this all over my face to make sure that everything is set. You know, going in with way too much powder in any one area. So I'm kind of like taking a tiny bit, starting it in one area, and then slowly placing that around the rest of the face. Now, if you are at a place where you are not like satisfied with how much coverage you have, or if you want it to be a little bit more glam on the glam side, then what you can do, one of my favorite tricks, is to layer your powders on top of your creams. So every product that we went in with, contour, bronzer, blush, go in with a powder version of that on top. Personally, I don't think I need that. It's really just about like how glam you want it to be. But one of the tricks to making your makeup look like skin is using these really light amounts of product and layering them. Okay, so the powders are going to help reinforce all of the creams. You just want to make sure that, like I just did, you set with a little bit of a translucent powder before you go in with those other products. Personally, I'm really happy with the way that my skin looks right now. I like the amount of blush color that I have, the amount of warmth and shape that I have to my face looks extremely natural. So I'm just going to stop right here. I'm going to set using the, what is this called? Stay All Night Microfine Setting Mist from e.l.f. Oh, shake it up. So this is going to help set everything, melt that powder into your face. You want to make sure that you're holding it far enough back so you're not like spritzing yourself in the face, you know, because then you're just going to end up with a patch. And you also want to kind of like mist the outer perimeter because a little bit will hit the center of your face. But if you go in too far into the center of your face, if you have oily skin or if you get oil in your T-zone, it can kind of like exacerbate that or cause it to happen when you've powdered and stuff. So focus in on the outer perimeter of the face, especially because that's like those are the main areas that you typically will end up touching, you know, like resting your, I always do extra underneath my jawline because when I'm, you you know, at an event or if I'm out to dinner or something, sometimes I'll like go to rest my my chin on my hand or something, and this just helps prevent any of that makeup from coming off. Okay, I just popped on a quick brow. Obviously, I'm not going to finish off this video without talking about highlighter. So you can make your, you can make a powder highlight look skin-like, but it can take a little bit extra, and especially if you're someone who has texture on your cheeks, which especially as you get older, I feel like that's where you end up with texture. For me, I feel like I've been getting more and more texture and just like breakouts and stuff like in this area, which is irritating because it's where I like to highlight. So rather than using a powder, I'm going to be using the L'Oreal True Match Glotion, Lumi Glotion. This one is in the shade Fair Glow. It's 901. They have like really pretty golden and deeper shades as well, but this one is kind of like a nice neutrally, yeah, it's kind of just like a nude, like a light nude with some pink stuff in it. It's pretty neutral, which is nice. So it's not like one color or whatever. You can use this as a primer. You can use it as a highlighter. I'm gonna put a little bit of this on my hand. Oh, Jesus. On my hand and just kind of like blend it out a little bit like that. And then I'm gonna pick it up with, I'm just gonna use my concealer sponge. Pick up with my sponge. I'm gonna pop this in a nice C shape on the top of my cheekbone. Right here. Ooh, so pretty. My skin's pretty well hydrated, so I'm not gonna take it up above my brow. I'm literally just gonna focus it right here. And that just adds such a beautiful, healthy glow without bringing attention to texture. Now, as it is, like my skin looks relatively like hydrated and healthy, but God, that just like adds a little extra something. All right, guys, so here is the finished result. Makeup looking just like skin. And it's nice because when I touch my face, it doesn't feel oily, it doesn't feel sticky or gooey or anything like that. It doesn't feel like I have heavy coverage that I can't touch, especially like along my jawline and stuff. I feel like I can rest my hand if I need to. But it also, we've created like a really pretty shape, got nice color on the face, nice, you know, coverage underneath the eyes and in the areas where I needed it. All right, guys, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing all of these drugstore products in action. There's some really good ones here that I completely forgot about how good L'Oreal Infallible Concealer is. Also, Revlon Color Stay Foundation, I just absolutely love. Like the formulas are so nice. I popped a link up at some point in the corner of the video of my my other video on how to make makeup look like skin, which goes more into depth about like layering powders on top of creams. If you're looking for something that's gonna be like a little bit more glam, you can apply all of those tricks to the drugstore products. But I'm like very happy with the way that this looks. It's a perfect everyday kind of like makeup look, and it actually doesn't take as long as it feels like me when you're not like talking it through, you know? It might take a little bit of practice to get it down, but it's beautiful. I love it. Don't forget to check out the Sleep and Glow Omnia pillow if you are interested. That link will be down below. I love it so much. I literally sleep on it every single night. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Let me know if there are any other like drugstore specific videos that you want to see. I did a foundation swatch video recently specifically for Olive Skin, and if you wanted to see like just drugstore foundations, I could do that because I did like a bunch of different ones, but I realized that I actually have way more foundations than I thought I did. So I can definitely do like a part 2 to that video if anybody cares. Thank you so much for watching. What? Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe, like, comment, whatever. And I will see you in the next one, dude. I always misplace my little remote.